The Dragon Slayer Academy existed within the digital world of his favorite game, a place where players rose through blood and struggled to become humanity's last line of defense against the monstrous swarms that plagued the realm. Within this game, victory meant progress. By slaying creatures and completing quests, players strengthened their avatars until they could challenge even gods themselves. That intoxicating pursuit of growth was what fueled him. He had poured endless hours into grinding, pushing his heroes far beyond ordinary limits. After nurturing 1,000 NPC students all the way to S rank, the system suddenly rewarded his obsession with something extraordinary, a new quest. It wasn't just rare, it was unique. An X rank mission, unseen by any other player. The reward promised to match its prestige, X rank loot that could push his champions past the old ceiling of S rank. The thought alone sent a thrill through him. Then, without warning, everything changed. The moment he accepted the quest, his surroundings melted away. He wasn't playing the game anymore. He was inside it. The world of Dragon Slayer Academy unfolded around him, vast and vivid. Yet unlike most who would panic at such an impossible event, he didn't flinch. It felt strangely normal, like stepping into his favorite world was just another Tuesday. He quickly opened his status window and froze. 0 across the board. No levels, no traits, no skills, no gear. A complete reset. Before frustration could settle, another system prompt appeared. He'd been granted a few special traits exclusive to first-time transmigrators. Their descriptions were vague, but hope flickered in his chest. Maybe these traits would help him grind back up, reclaiming the strength he once wielded. Then came the tutorial. The system announced his first challenge: survive for 10 minutes. If successful, he'd receive the Dragon Slayer Academy new student kit. The objective sounded laughably easy. Low-level mobs? He'd handled thousands before. All he needed to do was keep his distance and wait out the timer. But the world had other plans. A deep, guttural roar shattered the calm. The ground quaked under pounding footsteps, far too heavy for beginner monsters. He looked up, and disbelief hit him like a brick. 2 dragons were clashing in the sky above, each unleashing waves of destructive power. Panic surged. He sprinted through the forest, branches whipping at his face as the ground exploded behind him. A single thought echoed in his mind. This was supposed to be a tutorial. 2 S-rank bosses at the very start made no sense. Then again, this was an X difficulty quest. Maybe this was the price of exclusivity. In the distance, the fire dragon began charging a devastating spell. The air shimmered, and the temperature spiked. If he stayed put, he'd be vaporized within seconds. Desperation took over, and his thoughts jumped back to those mysterious traits. One of them stood out: Copy. He activated it. As its name implied, the skill allowed him to duplicate another being's abilities temporarily. It was his only chance to survive the inferno that was about to swallow the world. To successfully copy a skill, proximity was essential. The system required the user to observe the ability closely, and, more importantly, to identify the target's name and rank before duplication could occur. For an average player, that would be a nightmare. But for someone who once dominated the leaderboards, such prerequisites were nothing more than routine. Without wasting a second, he locked onto his target, the fire dragon, and replicated one of its traits: elemental resistance. A faint shimmer enveloped his body, forming an invisible barrier just as the flames surged forward. The searing heat licked at his skin, but the copied resistance kept him from being reduced to ash. Unfortunately, copying a skill would have to wait. His mana flow was empty, his veins dry of any energy that could sustain an ability. Then, a sudden shift in the air sent shivers through him. The wind reversed, violently dragging dust and debris toward the fire dragon's maw. The beast was preparing to unleash a full-force breath attack. Across the sky, its rival, the lightning dragon, began to charge its own, sparks crawling across its massive wings. Panic set in. He bolted, sprinting through the scorched forest as the ground trembled beneath his feet. Even with his newfound resistance, a direct hit from a dragon's breath would turn him into a stain on the dirt. These attacks were legendary, the signature weapons of apex predators. He didn't look back. The air roared as both dragons unleashed their fury, the collision of fire and lightning splitting the sky apart. The resulting explosion swallowed the forest in a blinding storm of energy. By the time the shockwave reached him, the system chimed in. The 10-minute tutorial had ended. Against all odds, he'd survived. The system rewarded his survival with the standard Dragon Slayer Academy starter kit, a uniform, a student ID, and a train ticket for the next phase. Tutorial 2. Board the train bound for Dragon Slayer Academy. Moments later, the scene shifted. The train platform buzzed with chaos. The sheer number of new recruits made it impossible to find a free seat once aboard. Every cabin was packed. In one corner, a young man carrying a katana politely asked a passenger to make space. His request was met with absolute silence. The girl occupying the seat was fast asleep, unbothered by the noise around her. That's when the new arrival, Kim Ho, stepped into the same cabin, scanning for an empty spot. He noticed the situation and, with casual confidence, asked the same girl for a seat. To everyone's surprise, she stirred from her nap and agreed without hesitation. Settling down beside her, Kim Ho thanked her and introduced himself. She responded in kind, her calm voice identifying her as Seo Ye-in. Meanwhile, the katana-wielding student stood frozen, crushed by the sheer unfairness of fate. He had asked first and been ignored, yet Kim Ho succeeded effortlessly. With a heavy sigh, he announced his name, Go Hyun Woo, though no one had asked. Seo Ye-in gave him the same response as before, silence. Still, he awkwardly joined the group, quietly grateful that at least he'd managed to sit. Kim Ho demanded an explanation from Hyun Woo about why he showed up late for the train. The katana-carrying guy answered with a tale of distraction. He'd come across 2 dragons on his way, an awe-striking sight that nearly made him forget what he was even doing. Kim had seen those beasts too, but unlike Hyun Woo, the memory didn't sit well with him. His encounter had been far from majestic, more like something to shove deep down and not dig back up. Soon, the train jerked forward and started rolling. This destination, Dragon Slayer Academy, wasn't new terrain for Kim. Every time he raised a new hero, this was where he ended up. He'd memorized the place like muscle memory. That familiarity killed any excitement about the trip. He figured there'd be nothing surprising, just a rehash of what he already knew. But the moment he stepped into the train car, something felt off. The students around him, the ones sharing his cabin, and even the staff walking the aisles, none of them looked familiar. Not a single one triggered recognition. They weren't the default characters or NPCs he was used to seeing. Despite this world feeling like a carbon copy of the game he remembered, the people inside it had changed. And that could only mean one thing. Events and quests had shifted too. That uncertainty set off alarms in his head. He decided to stay sharp, eyes peeled for anything that didn't line up. Right now, one particular thing was gnawing at him. The way the girl beside him kept staring, eyes empty, like she was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense. Her name was Ye Yoon. She had a unique ability. Those eyes of hers weren't just for show. They broke down the world into readable data, stats she could analyze and use. One glance at the katana guy across from her gave her everything. Plain stats, average traits, nothing special. But when she turned those same eyes on Kim, they failed her. His stats were unreadable. A void, like staring into a locked file with no key. That's why she kept looking at him like that, brows tight, completely stumped. Her manager once told her to act friendly with people who caught her interest, build rapport, get close. So she took that advice and popped open her suitcase. Inside were some essentials for the trip, and snacks. Trying to play the role of the friendly seatmate, she offered him a cookie. Kim was thrown off by the move. It came out of nowhere. Still, rejecting it outright would have been rude, so he took it. To break the awkward silence, he asked if she baked them herself. She said yes. That explained the mediocre taste. He then shifted his attention to Hyun Woo and pointed out the strange longsword lying next to him. The katana guy lit up with pride. That blade, according to him, was no ordinary weapon. It was a sacred relic passed down in his martial sect. The reason it was still wrapped? He hadn't earned the right to unseal it yet. Until then, it stayed hidden beneath cloth and tradition. Until the day came when he earned the right to wield the katana, he'd stick to using a basic iron sword as a placeholder. That was the plan. But while the conversation unfolded, the cabin door swung open without warning. A blonde-haired guy barged in, bringing with him a loud grin and a burst of overly friendly energy that immediately shifted the whole atmosphere. Apparently, he was just looking for a seat, but Kim didn't buy it. Loud types weren't exactly his favorite, and this one gave off the wrong kind of vibe. It was obvious the guy wasn't here just to sit. He had another motive. The stranger, caught off guard by how fast his excuse fell apart, awkwardly reached into his coat, pulled out a business card, and introduced himself as Shin Byung-chul. This guy ran an errand business, or so he claimed. He offered to find anything, do anything, legal or not, for a price. Useful services for everyday life, he said. Kim wasn't impressed. He could already see straight through the pitch. This wasn't just some guy running a startup. It was a walking black market in a suit. Even now, he was under pursuit for promoting a shady operation inside a place that clearly didn't allow it. As Shin kept talking, he kept checking the windows, eyes darting like someone on the run. He denied it when pressed, but his nervous glances betrayed the truth. Then he tried to bolt, but by then, it was already too late. The disciplinary committee had arrived. A group run by students themselves, this committee enforced order within the academy walls with more authority than any outside institution. No patience, no warnings. They showed up and immediately demanded he hand over every unauthorized item he had. Shin tried to argue back, pointing out how minor his crime was, like they were dragging him off for high treason over selling snacks and odd jobs. But they weren't listening. The head of the committee stepped in, and without hesitation hit him with a surge of electricity for not cooperating fast enough. Kim took note of her. She was a lightning-type mage, a rarity in this world. Not only that, but her presence was commanding, ruthless even. And it just so happened that Kim still had an empty slot in his copy skill list. Perfect timing. That bland cookie he'd been given, it was about to serve a better purpose. Without hesitation, he dropped it to the floor, ready to turn the situation to his advantage. Meanwhile, the committee leader had no plans of easing up. With Shin still resisting, her patience ran out. She summoned another bolt, this one shaped like a hummingbird, aimed right at the man's body, ready to end the discussion once and for all. Just when it looked like Shin Byung-chul was about to get zapped into oblivion, Kim Ho made his move. He stretched out his hand and intercepted the lightning attack mid-flight, catching it clean before it could hit its mark. The head of the disciplinary committee was left stunned, unsure whether to be impressed or furious. Kim strolled out of the cabin, visibly irritated, not by the spell, but by the chaos that made him drop his precious cookie. The disciplinary leader had no clue what kind of fool she was dealing with. While they were still trying to wrap their heads around the absurd interruption, Kim had already achieved what he came for, copying the lightning-based skill called Hummingbird. Mission accomplished. He gave a dramatic monologue about the tragic loss of the cookie, his most cherished companion, stolen from him by the meddling of power-tripping student enforcers. One of the committee members, clearly not amused, called his story nonsense. The guy, dubbed Korean Jesus by some, looked ready to throw punches. Hyun-woo didn't back down. His hand went to his sword, silently signaling that if things were going to escalate, he wouldn't hesitate to swing. Tension thickened. Both sides locked eyes, measuring who'd move first. Sensing it might spiral out of control, the committee leader stepped in, reined in her hot-headed subordinate, and offered a peace offering, a free dessert coupon, as compensation for the irreplaceable cookie. Kim accepted the bribe like it was a noble trade and left, satisfied, disappearing once again. Truth is, he couldn't care less about saving Shin Byung-chul. He just wanted the lightning skill, and now he had it. Both a skill slot and a trait slot filled. Clean sweep. Soon after, the committee president retrieved the stolen item Byung-chul had with him. Turned out, it wasn't contraband or a weapon, it was a damn wig. Something he'd snatched from a station attendant as part of a paid prank job. The guy was a money hound and clearly accepted any commission, no matter how dumb. Even Kim had to admit this mess was entirely on Shin. As he walked away, the girl from earlier warned Kim to steer clear of Byung-chul and his scams if he didn't want trouble down the road. But Kim wasn't the type to follow warnings. He figured he'd handle things his own way. Meanwhile, Korean Jesus, still steaming, vowed to remember Kim's face. Not far away, Hyun-woo dug into the committee's background. From Byung-chul, he learned that this wasn't just any group. They were the best of the elite. The one who'd launched the hummingbird spell? That was Song Chun-hai, the current president. The name hit him hard. Chun-hai belonged to that Song family, the same one that ruled over Topaz Tower. And she wasn't just some noble with a fancy title. She was dangerous, strong, stylish, the kind you didn't want to cross. And her grandfather? That was Thunderlord Song Gyeong-yoon. A name that carried so much weight, even Hyun-woo felt a little sorry for whoever might end up dating Chun-hai. As for the crew trailing behind Chun-hai, they weren't just some nameless extras either. Jo Byok stood out. He was a student under the infamous Fist King. Then there was Han Somin, trained by the Sword Empress herself. And finally, Gaeum Yohan. Despite sounding like a joke, he wasn't one. He was the sole heir to the Golden Lotus Pavilion, a name that carried weight. With introductions out of the way, Byung-chul decided to vanish before anything else exploded. Once he left, Hyun-woo turned to Kim-ho, curiosity written all over him. That whole dramatic move, intercepting an attack just to save a cookie, it made no sense. Why risk it all for something so dumb? Kim-ho laid the cards on the table. The cookie had been just an excuse. What really drew him in was the lightning spell Chun-hai had fired. That revelation threw Hyun-woo off, especially since he'd clearly seen Kim step in and catch the hummingbird spell bare-handed. Kim shot a question back at him, testing what Hyun-woo actually knew about that spell. After thinking for a moment, Hyun-woo admitted he'd never seen it used before. Even during that live demo, the spell itself was practically invisible. No electric trail, no flash. It didn't even look like it was meant to damage. More like it was designed to paralyze the target on the spot. Kim nodded but didn't fully agree. There was more to the hummingbird than that. He broke it down. The name came from the erratic flight pattern of the bird it mimicked. A real hummingbird moved unpredictably, fast, almost impossible to catch. That's what made the spell dangerous. It relied heavily on the caster's finesse. The fact that Kim caught it said more about Chun-hai than about him. A proper mage would have altered the spell mid-flight, kept it darting. But this one flew in a straight line and landed in his palm. That spoke volumes. Chun-hai still had a long way to go in mastering her control. Hyun-woo couldn't hide his reaction. He was genuinely impressed. Not only had Kim broken the spell down with insane precision, but he'd also analyzed its flaws in real time. And Kim wasn't done. He'd made another observation during the encounter. Chun-hai had cast an E-rank spell using only a D-rank strength stat. That wasn't something just anyone could do. It hinted at a powerful trait backing her up, or maybe a huge internal mana reserve. Either way, Kim was convinced she'd eventually meet all the expectations tied to being the Thunderlord's granddaughter. Back on Hyun-woo, the guy was already acting like a die-hard fan. In just a short time, he'd gone from stranger to devoted follower. Kim thought he was laying it on a little too thick, but Hyun-woo wasn't joking around. He even offered to help with anything, anytime. Kim didn't hesitate. If help was offered, he was going to take it. Without wasting the chance, he roped Hyun-woo in for the next part of his plan. Right then, Kim-ho casually slipped in a request. He needed to borrow a silver coin. No build-up, just straight to the point. Cut to their next stop. A beat-up, half-forgotten machine sitting in the corner of what used to be a casino. That's right, a gambling den now reduced to rubble, and this machine looked like it hadn't worked since the building lost its license. To Hyun-woo, it was nothing more than a rusted-out relic. But to Kim-ho, it was an opportunity. In fact, he was willing to gamble everything he had on it, which at the moment was exactly one silver coin that wasn't even his. He shoved the coin in. At first, nothing happened. Dead silence. The thing looked just as broken as it had before, and doubt began to creep in. Then it roared to life. Lights flickered, gears shifted, and a hidden event. The broken slot machine sprang open. A familiar feature to Kim-ho, who'd already unlocked every achievement in the game version of this world. He didn't waste time, grabbed the lever, gave it a confident pull, and hoped the payout would be worth it. But all that fanfare led to a single result. A water bottle. No rare weapon, no legendary gear, not even one of those absurd joke items like the unyielding fork sword or the farmer's shotgun. Just a plain bottle of water. Hyun-woo stared in disbelief, unable to figure out what kind of scheme Kim was running here. Kim, on the other hand, immediately laid out the real issue. Messing with this machine was strictly against Academy rules. Anything obtained from it counted as an illegal gain. That meant they were breaking the law, plain and simple. Realization hit Hyun-woo hard. He was now an accomplice, acting as lookout while Kim spammed the slot lever for contraband loot. Kim figured they were safe. The committee rarely patrolled this area. Famous last words. Just moments later, Han So-min, yes, that So-min, appeared right on cue. She didn't hesitate to remind them what messing with the machine meant. Demerits. Serious ones. The tables had turned. Fast. Kim-ho whispered instructions. Stall her. Hyun-woo didn't flinch. So-min warned him he'd be punished too, but he didn't care. In fact, he welcomed it. Sword drawn, he looked eager to test his strength against a disciple of the Sword Empress herself. So-min didn't hold back. She took note of his name, gave no more warnings, and charged. Her first attack came in heavy and fast. A solid forward thrust. Hyun-woo blocked it cleanly, then swung back with a counterstrike. She dodged with ease. A pause followed, brief but tense. Then So-min gathered energy into her blade. and everything about her movement changed. She launched forward with blinding speed, kicked off the ground, and hurled herself downward, channeling her entire weight into a crushing vertical strike. Soman's attack came down hard, so much so that Hyunwoo had to brace with both hands just to block it. From the sidelines, Kim Ho kept a close eye on the clash, quickly noticing a key issue. Hyunwoo was struggling, not because of skill, but because he lacked internal energy. That deficit was dragging him down, but Kim wasn't ready for the fight to end. He came for entertainment, not a quick finish. With a swift motion, he cast an amplification spell toward Hyunwoo, forcefully boosting the swordsman's magic core from E rank to C. The spell wasn't permanent. 1 minute duration, 1 hour cooldown. Still, that 1 minute was all Hyunwoo had, and he needed to make it count. As the timer ticked down to 14 seconds, Kim Ho's attention briefly drifted. He thought back to slot machines and why most players avoided them. Too random, too risky. But there was a hidden mechanic, something buried in the system that few ever discovered. A guaranteed jackpot on the 6th spin, a failsafe, just like a gacha game's pity counter. Most players started the game with 5 coins. Kim had now used his 5th. The 6th? That one would guarantee the best reward in the machine. All he needed was 1 more coin, the one he borrowed from Hyunwoo. He dropped it into the slot. The machine clanked and whirred, then spat out its highest tier prize, a rank C dark ice crystal. Dangerous, volatile, and potentially lethal if misused. But the reward was real. Before he could celebrate, trouble crept up behind him. A blue-haired attacker, silent and quick, moved in to strike from Kim Ho's blind spot. But Kim had already accounted for that. Right on cue, Hyunwoo intercepted the attack, knocking it off course. But the cost was high. His iron sword shattered on impact. The buff expired. Soman was expecting him to collapse or retreat, but instead, she watched Kim Ho uncork the crystal and drink it. Warning label be damned. The system responded instantly, applying a frozen status across his entire body. His breathing ceased, his throat tightened. He looked like he was choking to death, like a real-time reenactment of Joffrey's infamous demise. But the freezing effect glitched, toggling on and off in a constant loop. He wasn't dying. And then, as if nothing had happened, Kim Ho stood up, calm, steady, untouched. Both Soman and Hyunwoo stood frozen for real, completely stunned by what they'd just witnessed. Right after the chaos settled, Hyunwoo turned to Kim Ho, asking what exactly he'd just consumed. Kim, without hesitation, claimed it was a mana-replenishing elixir. Simple, clean, totally misleading. But let's rewind to the truth behind that 6th spin. That final roll of the slot machine dropped the dark ice crystal, one of the most dangerous items a beginner could ever stumble upon. Just a shard smaller than a fingernail was enough to turn a person into a frozen statue. Instant death, no delay. Think of it as Medusa's petrification, but willingly ingested. It wasn't just risky, it was straight up suicidal. Except, for Kim Ho, it wasn't. He was the exception, thanks to his S-rank elemental resistance, the same broken trait he earned from slaying an S-rank dragon during his tutorial. That resistance put his body in a loop, constantly applying and nullifying the frozen status. The result? Complete immunity. Not only that, the dangerous energy packed into the crystal was now his to use freely, without any of the drawbacks. As for how he got away with it in front of the disciplinary committee, he pulled out the manipulator playbook, full gaslight mode, smooth explanations, half-truths, enough technical jargon to throw them off. It worked. Hyunwoo, meanwhile, felt content. Helping Kim out gave him a chance to duel Soman, a rare opportunity for any swordsman. And Kim made sure to thank him, because without that borrowed coin, the jackpot wouldn't have happened. Still curious, Hyunwoo asked about that amplification spell Kim had used during the fight, but Kim turned him down. The spell wasn't something he could spam. It had cooldown restrictions, and even Hyunwoo had to admit, anything that powerful needed a limit. While the two discussed magic and close calls, Yane, their sleepy-eyed companion, was barely keeping up with the conversation. She'd been dozing off for most of the trip. Their train started to slow, approaching the final stop, Dungeon Island. This place had a history drenched in blood. Once a lawless zone ruled by criminals and violence, it became legendary thanks to one man, the original Dragon Slayer. He wiped out every criminal on the island, conquered the endless dungeons single-handedly, and laid the foundations of a new city built on top of the chaos. From that city rose the Dragon Slayer Academy, a sanctuary for building elite warriors. The train pulled in. As they stepped off, Hyunwoo was struck by the atmosphere. The academy grounds were overflowing with students. Every background, every walk of life, all gathered in one place. Before they could take it all in, they ran straight into Chun Hai. The committee leader hadn't forgotten. She wanted Kim Ho back in her office, immediately. The scene cut to the committee's interrogation chamber, a grim room known across campus for changing lives, and not in a good way. Anyone who entered that space rarely came out the same. That reputation wasn't exaggerated. The questioning started with a full-body scan. The goal was clear: confirm the effects of the dark ice crystal Kim Ho had swallowed earlier, but nothing registered. The frozen status was gone, wiped clean, no trace. That alone raised eyebrows. The committee began to question whether the forbidden item had even been real in the first place. Sehun, the cold-blooded head of the interrogation department, made his stance obvious. If Kim Ho stepped out of line again, there wouldn't be a second warning. No one had been harmed this time, but the next visit would come with consequences. With that, the session wrapped up, much to Chunhye's frustration. She clearly wanted more out of it. Everything about the incident reeked of suspicion. The kid had gone out of his way to activate the slot machine, a rule-breaking move on its own. Then he consumed a lethal item right in front of the council and somehow came out untouched. It didn't make sense. To Chun Hai, one explanation stood out. Kim Ho had to be hiding an illegal skill. She suggested using the magnifying glass, a specialized tool that could identify hidden traits and abilities. Sehun agreed, but added a warning. That method came with risk. If nothing turned up, they'd look like fools. You didn't use the magnifying glass unless you were absolutely sure. Realizing she'd overstepped, Chun Hai backed off and apologized. Sehun reminded her to stay sharp but patient and told her to hurry if she still wanted to catch the entrance ceremony. It was already starting. Elsewhere, Kim Ho rejoined the new students, blending back into the crowd like nothing had happened. That little detour? It had just completed his third tutorial. Showing up to the ceremony on time earned him a batch of silver coins and a weapon selection ticket. Rank E gear, sure, but it beat being empty-handed. And just like that, his investment, the silver he lost earlier, was now balanced out. The entrance ceremony itself kicked off shortly after. But if anyone expected inspiration, they'd be disappointed. The speaker? A washed-up-looking man who carried himself like he'd rather be anywhere else. The guy looked like someone hired to pretend to care. But don't be fooled. Behind that tired face was a legend. This man had once led the main Dragon Slayer squad, and by academy rule, the principal was always chosen from the ranks of retired frontline heroes. Back in his prime, he wielded a blade that could cut through mountains and stood at the top of the food chain. Now? He looked like someone still recovering from emotional damage. Rumor had it, he'd been rejected, again, by the same saintess who'd curved him years ago. No wonder the guy looked like he'd been living in the friend zone for a decade. Still, he stood tall and opened the ceremony. He welcomed the incoming students and reminded them of the Academy's core purpose, to raise a new generation of warriors strong enough to slay dragons and carry on the legacy of heroes. The Academy's first hero made sure to hammer in the word slaying. His entire speech centered around driving that point home. Every student was supposed to understand what it meant to become a dragon killer. Kim Ho understood the message, but the delivery was torture. What should have been a short welcome turned into an endless monologue. Half the crowd looked like they were on the edge of passing out. Eventually, the speech reached its end. Only Hyunwoo looked thrilled, glowing like someone who just had a life-changing moment. Everyone else, including Kim Ho, looked dead inside. Apparently, the swordsman had built a natural resistance to long-winded speeches after years of training under a master who loved to rant. The second phase of the ceremony started. The staff announced the new list of restricted items. Anyone caught holding one would face punishment. Then came the big announcement. All new students would face a trial in a dungeon's first floor, the safest zone. It was a way to test them early, without major risk. Instructor Four Eyes stressed the importance of safety and obeying the rules. With that, the ceremony finally ended. No one could believe it was actually over. It felt like surviving a mental dungeon. Right after, Byung-chul appeared again, casually inviting the trio out for food. Looked like he'd earned himself a new tattoo, probably got clawed by the creature he annoyed earlier. He warned them to enjoy the meal while they could. Tomorrow, everything changed. Later that night, Hyunwoo and Kim Ho found out they'd been assigned dorms right next to each other. While Hyunwoo got excited about that, Kim Ho stepped into his room with a different goal, no rest yet. He sat on the bed, crossed his legs, and entered a meditative state. The focus? Building a mana core. To use magic, one needed a core, an internal engine to channel mana. Kim-ho had never made one in real life, but he knew the theory like the back of his hand. He'd played this game enough times to memorize every system. On top of that, his body had already fused some mana with the dark ice crystal, giving him a head start. Next door, Hyunwoo was doing the same, sitting still, reflecting on every move and mistake from his fight with Sumin, the Sword Empress's disciple. Both were locked in silence, mentally preparing for what tomorrow had in store. She had been Hyunwoo's true opponent for a long time. Even though both of them held back during the duel, things would have been far messier if they'd fought at full strength. The only reason Hyunwoo lasted as long as he did was because Kim-ho stepped in and boosted his core mid-fight. That intervention stretched the battle far beyond what should have been possible. Hyunwoo couldn't shake the impression. Kim-ho felt more like a master than a peer. The guy always stayed calm under pressure, dissected every situation like he was 5 steps ahead, and carried an edge that couldn't be taught. That's why Hyunwoo found himself stuck at a crossroads. Could he really trust him? Could he ask for help? But he dropped the thought quickly. Making his first friend into some kind of deal-based partner didn't sit right with him. Instead, he doubled down on improving himself with his own strength. The next day rolled in. A temporary classroom had been assigned, and students gathered inside, talking among themselves. Even Yane, perpetually half asleep, managed to show up on time, surprising everyone who expected her to be late again. But the room was missing one key thing: a teacher. Class had technically started, but no one was running it. The longer the wait dragged on, the more it felt like whoever was in charge had a serious problem with punctuality. Then, finally, someone stepped into the room, and the energy shifted fast. At first, the students looked excited. That vanished the second they saw his face. The man who walked in looked like someone straight out of a police lineup. Wild-eyed, scarred, and carrying the vibe of someone who'd just broken out of a maximum security prison. He introduced himself as their homeroom teacher, Lee Sudok. He didn't waste time. He pointed at a random student and told her to say his name aloud. Panic set in. She stammered something about the villain hunter. Wrong. Tried again. The human butcher. Closer. Both were nicknames that stuck, and both were terrifying for a reason. Kim-ho, watching silently, took a mental step back to assess the situation. This wasn't just some scary dude. Sudok wasn't a teacher by choice. He was a hunter, a specialist who tracked down S-rankers who'd gone rogue. In a world where elite heroes were forged like weapons, some cracked and turned villain. Sudok's job? Find them and break them. And break them he did. He wasn't famous for arrests. He was famous for body counts. Villains didn't get captured. They got buried. That's how he earned his titles. And according to him, he only agreed to teach because the principal wouldn't stop asking. Now he had a classroom instead of a battlefield, but his expectations hadn't changed. Execution still had to be perfect. His message was brutal and clear. Anyone who failed his class could expect the same treatment he gave villains. Perfect motivation. If fear didn't light a fire under them, nothing would. With that, he launched into his first lesson, an introduction to the school's grading system. The grading system kicked off with the written exam, which made up 30% of the total score. Then came behavior, a 10% slice awarded simply for staying out of trouble. Easy points, unless someone messed up. A single mistake could tank that score to 0 and drag everything else down with it. Sudok, dripping with sarcasm, made it clear he'd be keeping a close eye on every student, hoping at least a few might survive until graduation. The next part focused on practical exams, broken into 2 sections: dungeon quests and PvP matches. As the names implied, students would be graded on their ability to clear dungeons and fight each other. Rankings would be relative, based on performance compared to their peers. Add it all up: 30% written, 50% practical, and 10% behavior. A clean 100-point evaluation system. With grading explained, Sudok didn't bother wasting time. He led the group straight to the arena. Multiple fights were already in progress. This was what Byung-chul had been hyped about the day before. The PvP battles. Rules varied depending on the setup, but today's format was labeled as a death match. Not the literal kind, just a fight that continued until one fighter's health dropped to 0 or they were physically unable to continue. Voluntary surrender was allowed. Every match had a 5-minute cap, and if no winner emerged, it ended in a draw or went to a judge's decision. Byung-chul explained that each participant would face 3 randomly chosen opponents from the same year. Every win netted 300 points, but losses or draws. No penalty, but no rewards either. Just dead time. Kim Ho already knew the deal. No negative scoring, but no one was handing out participation trophies either. Suddenly, a system prompt flashed in front of him. A subquest triggered by the placement exam. The requirement, score an average result. That meant taking down at least one opponent. The reward, an extra copy slot. That was a solid deal. From Kim Ho's perspective, the task was easy. One victory in combat and a decent dungeon score were well within reach. But what really grabbed his attention was something bigger. This was a perfect chance to study other students' skills. It wasn't just about passing the test, it was a scouting mission. He could identify standout talent for future use, whether it meant recruiting them as future allies or copying their skills and traits for his own arsenal. Before he could strategize further, the announcer called his name, and that of his opponent. He stepped forward toward the battlefield, eyes narrowing as he saw her approach. Scarlet hair, confident stance, and blazing aura. His opponent was a flame magic user from the Ruby Tower. The Ruby Tower was infamous for raw power, high-output magic that scorched through enemies with sheer firepower. Kim Ho used to main them back when this world was still just a game, and he loved every second of it. But right now, one of their proud representatives was about to become his 5-minute test subject. Manhua, the flame mage, wasn't impressed. Facing off against someone with no fame, no reputation, and wielding what looked like a retired grandpa's walking stick disguised as an earth staff, it was insulting. An E-rank support tool? That was all he brought? One glance told her everything. He wasn't from the Emerald Tower, which meant he wasn't an earth mage. That raised one question. Why bring a staff like that at all? Maybe it was just to boost support magic? Whatever the plan was, she didn't plan to give him enough time to show it. The match kicked off, and Manhua wasted no time. Treating him like a standard support caster, she fired up a combustion spell, aiming to take him out in one clean blow. Flames roared. The crowd leaned forward, impressed by her precision and raw control. Ruby Tower flare in full display. Then the smoke cleared. Her opponent stood unharmed. Manhua blinked, confused. Sure, she didn't expect to wipe him out in one hit, but not even a scratch? That wasn't just surprising, it was absurd. Kim Ho smirked, still untouched. Now she was rattled. Something was wrong. Maybe he used a dispel to nullify her spell. She quickly shifted strategies, preparing a technique that couldn't be blocked by typical anti-magic. A full ring of explosive flames erupted around him. Precision fire meant to trap, punish, and overwhelm. He didn't move, not a step, not a flinch. He just stood there, completely unaffected, soaking the blast like it was warm rain. The sight pushed her to her limit. Irritated, she called up a third spell, Fire Pillar, and launched it straight for his head. A towering inferno erupted on impact, drawing another wave of cheers from the audience. She was showing them what Ruby Tower Elite looked like, but once again, the smoke cleared, and Kim Ho stood unscathed. Nothing had landed. Every single spell, ignored. All her confidence, all the pride she poured into her magic, it wasn't landing a single hit. That's when Kim Ho decided to end it. He activated Hummingbird, the lightning technique copied from Chun Hai. Manhua hadn't expected lightning, especially not from someone posing as a support. She dodged the first strike, but the bird wasn't done. Kim Ho curved its path mid-air, sending it straight into her back, lightning quick, no warning. She dropped to her knees, locked in place, paralyzed by the spell's effect. With the match already decided, Kim Ho proposed calling it. Letting her drag the fight further would only expose more of her abilities to the crowd, a tactical disaster for future rounds. It was advice cloaked in mockery, but it wasn't wrong. Frustrated but realistic, Manhua admitted defeat. The audience froze in disbelief. The nameless guy with the old man's staff had just crushed a Ruby Tower prodigy. Expectations shattered, like the ending of Game of Thrones, but in reverse. Kim Ho wasn't thrilled about all the attention he'd drawn from his first match. With everyone's eyes locked on him, he planned to keep a lower profile from here on out. But fate clearly didn't care. He got called up for his next battle immediately, no chance to rest. This time, his opponent was none other than Chun Hai, the stylish menace herself, head of the first-year Disciplinary Committee. Aura sharp, presence louder than thunder, and clearly out for something personal. Kim Ho took one look at her, and just to throw a wrench in her plans, surrendered before the match even began. Sudok, stunned, questioned his withdrawal, but Kim simply claimed he wasn't in fighting condition. He couldn't care less about racking up more points. He'd already secured the win he needed. He forfeited his third match, too, locking in 2 back-to-back losses and lighting a fire under Chun-Hai's nerves. She snapped, calling him weak, gutless, and nothing like her grandfather, who had always preached resolve in battle. Kim remembered the man, Thunder Monarch, a legend. He could see pieces of him in her, no doubt. And sure, in a normal context, her words might have carried weight. But not here, not for him. He turned his back, walked off without flinching, and handed her the win without lifting a finger. She was furious, forced to accept the outcome with gritted teeth. Before leaving, Kim tossed in one last insult, asking her to send over that dessert coupon she still owed him. That remark hit a nerve so hard, it was a miracle she didn't detonate on the spot. Can't say the same for her next opponent. Yang Ji-hong, stepping into the ring, had no clue what kind of fury he was about to walk into. He expected a proper match. What he got was divine punishment. She incinerated him in under a second. Lightning strikes straight from Zeus himself. His body hit the ground before the audience could even blink. The burns were brutal, her aura terrifying. Byung-chul watched from the sidelines and instantly understood. Kim Ho made the smartest move possible by ducking that fight. The man may be reckless, but he wasn't stupid. Chun-Hai, though, wasn't done glaring. She cast a burning stare in Kim Ho's direction, side-eye so intense it could melt armor. Byung-chul noticed. Everyone noticed. Kim Ho? Either he didn't see it or he didn't care. He admired her entrance. Power, dominance, flash, classic Thunderlord blood. But while the audience was dazzled by her destruction, the rest of the student body wasn't so forgiving. They weren't impressed with Kim's tactical retreats. To them, it looked like the guy got lucky in his first fight and backed out of the next 2 out of fear. Exactly what he wanted. Let them talk. Let the rumors spread. Misleading them into thinking he was some lucky amateur gave him the freedom he needed to move in silence. Sometimes bad press was the best cover. Meanwhile, Chun-Hai was cued for her final match, and this one had real heat. Her opponent? Seo Yeon, the Academy's rumored gun prodigy, daughter of Korea's very own John Wick. The reveal turned heads. A gun duelist versus a mage was a matchup worth watching. And in this case, it wasn't just hype. Gunners had real tactical edge when dealing with spellcasters. The crowd started to doubt her. Could Chun-Hai actually lose? Kim Ho didn't commit to a prediction. Not yet. The fight was still unwritten, and he'd be watching. To make things more entertaining, Kim Ho threw 5 silver coins on the line, betting on the outcome of the upcoming duel. True to form, Byung-chul, the greedy little rat, accepted without hesitation. The match kicked off. On one side stood Chun-Hai, the composed and intimidating granddaughter of the Thunderlord. On the other, the cold, unreadable gun duelist, Seo Yeon. From the start, Yeon went on the offensive, unleashing a storm of amplified bullets. Chun-Hai didn't flinch. She blocked every shot with ease, just as Kim Ho expected. Her mana pool was massive, and he knew it. Then came the retaliation. Chun-Hai summoned a swarm of hummingbird spells. The electric projectiles flew toward Yeon, who stayed locked in her firing stance. She dodged both birds initially, but Chun-Hee redirected them mid-flight, just like Kim Ho had done before. One of them clipped Yeon's face, stunning her and sending her crashing to the floor. It wasn't a clean hit. If it had been, the match would have ended on the spot. Still, it slowed her just enough. With her movements dulled by the shock, the second strike was all but guaranteed. Everything was falling into place exactly how Kim Ho had calculated. Chun-Hai was seconds away from finishing the match. Then, the unexpected. Yeon dropped a smoke grenade. The thick smoke burst up, blinding Chun-Hai's line of sight. Kim Ho raised an eyebrow. No ordinary grenade could have landed on someone like her, but this one did. With visibility cut off, the tide of battle shifted. Through the haze, Yeon repositioned and fired, landing a clean shot on Chun-Hee's back. It looked like a direct hit, but just before it connected, Chun-Hae had raised a barrier. Still, she'd been caught off guard. She knew she was in a dangerous position now. Yeon lined up another shot, and Byung-chul pointed out something else. This girl wasn't just skilled, she was rich. That invisibility cloak she wore wasn't standard gear. Neither was the high-end rifle just pulled out. The rifle fired again. Chun-Hai didn't even try to block it. She barely dodged it by inch. That one shot was enough to shake her strategy. Now, both fighters had roughly equal health. Half the match time had already passed. The cloak made things worse. Chun-Hai couldn't see her opponent at all. Every attack from Yan came out of nowhere, forcing her to react blindly. Another shot from behind nearly clipped her again. But Chun-Hai adapted. Using her barrier, she tracked the mana signature from Yeon's last bullet. That gave her just enough of a trace to lock onto her position. In the narrow window she had, she unleashed a wave of lightning across the arena floor, surging it toward the source. Yeon leapt to escape the surge. That jump sealed her fate. Mid-air, she had no mobility, nowhere to run. Chun-Hai launched another hummingbird spell. This one struck clean and paralyzed Yeon in mid-flight, but the clock betrayed her. The match timer hit 0 the moment the spell connected. Yeon fell to the ground, her health lower than Chun-Hai's, but the battle had ended. Byung-chul was stunned. Kim Ho not so much. After watching Chun-Hye's performance, he was sure no one could beat her in a straight fight. The judges ruled Chun-Hye the winner by health. Still, Kim Ho gave credit where it was due. Yeon had put up one hell of a fight and pushed it further than anyone expected. As for the wager, Byung-chul handed over the coins, already itching for another chance to win them back. Kim Ho turned him down flat. The guy was clearly hooked, and he wasn't going to feed the addiction. Back in the arena, Hyunwoo entered for his match. His opponent? Jo Byok, disciple of the Fist King. This one had potential. Kim Ho took the bet, this time putting his money on the Fist King's protege. Byung-chul called him out for being brutal, betting against his own friend. But Kim Ho didn't care. He wasn't here for loyalty, just for the truth. Naturally, the gambling addict didn't get the message, but Kim Ho didn't bother explaining further. He'd figure it out soon enough. Shifting to Hyunwoo's perspective, the pressure was on. He knew Kim Ho was watching, and this time, he was determined to show everything he had, even if the odds were stacked against him. Drawing the iron sword, he ignored the better weapon on his back. His opponent, Jo Byok, clearly noticed the decision and questioned it mentally. But Hyunwoo already knew. He wasn't ready to wield that blade yet. Byok didn't care either way. He had no intention of holding back. Both fighters squared up, and the duel began. Byok struck first, slipping past Hyunwoo's initial slash and immediately launching a devastating punch. The speed and power were no joke. Even though Hyunwoo managed to block it, the sheer impact sent his body flying. Reality hit fast. His opponent was the real deal. Basic swordplay wasn't going to cut it. Byok didn't let up. Like a human missile, he propelled himself forward again, ready to end it. Hyunwoo decided to meet him head-on, drawing on his clear-stream sword technique to try and break through. It didn't work. Their clash ended in disaster for him. The iron sword shattered instantly under the pressure of Byok's blows. Defenseless, Hyunwoo admitted defeat without hesitation. Still, he left behind a small cut on Byok's shoulder, proof he could at least land one hit. Byok acknowledged it and looked forward to a rematch, just like Kim Ho predicted. From the moment he saw Hyunwoo back on the train, he knew. The guy had talent, but that pathetic iron sword was holding him back. At this point, it was becoming a pattern. Every fight ended with a broken blade. Byung-chul, meanwhile, was crushed. Another bet lost. Another blow to his already sad silver stash. Kim Ho didn't let up, expecting payment immediately. With his coin pouch running dry, Byung-chul was offered another option: information. Kim Ho made it clear. If he couldn't pay in silver, he'd better cough up something useful. Later, the trio grabbed lunch while waiting for the next round of testing. According to the announcer, a raid placement exam was scheduled after the break. As they sat together, Kim Ho grew increasingly irritated watching Byung-chul slowly chew through his food like it was a meditation ritual. Finally, the guy finished and asked what Kim wanted. Kim Ho went straight to the point. He wanted details on the top players from each faction. Byung-chul didn't mind sharing. He didn't think the intel was all that valuable anyway. Now, let's break down the Academy's 4 major factions. Not counting the official student council, of course. There was the Muram Alliance, a martial arts powerhouse led by none other than Mo Yong-jun, the grandson of the Sword Saint. Then came the Magic Tower Society, represented by the Ruby Tower's own Hong Yunhua, the same girl Kim Ho had steamrolled earlier in his match, despite her now being revealed as a high-ranking figure. Honestly, the school felt more like a crossover between 4 completely different Manhua universes smashed together under one roof. Third on the list was the Guild Federation, led by Druid Park Na-ri, famous not just for her position, but also for her tiger-striped cat that somehow commanded as much attention as she did. According to rumors, Another member in her guild was secretly hiding their full strength, making the faction even more unpredictable. And finally, there was the Knight's Order. Leading them was none other than Lee Sang-yoon, the Swordmaster's son. If that didn't sound like a Manhua protagonist's title, nothing else would. Honestly, it felt like Jinrun Candle had reincarnated into this academy. 4 factions, 4 powerhouses. The lineup was stacked, and even Byung-chul seemed impressed by his own list. Then they realized something was off. Hyun-woo was missing. Byung-chul suddenly remembered something about the club president and bolted away in a panic, leaving Kim-ho behind with the ever-silent Yane. Kim-ho glanced at her. She always seemed distant, like she existed slightly out of phase with the rest of the group. He figured he'd at least try to bridge the gap. He brought up the cookie she'd given him before, then mentioned the dessert coupon he got from Chun-hai as thanks. To return the favor, he summoned a blueberry cake with the coupon's magic, offering to share. She accepted. A rare, small connection formed between them over dessert. Mid-bite, Yane asked for his take on her loss to Chun-hai. Kim-ho didn't hesitate. Normal mana bullets couldn't break through mana barriers. Against someone with Chun-hai's mana pool, standard attacks were pointless. Still, he saw potential. If Yane could amplify her shots, she might flip the outcome in a rematch. But then came the shock. Yane admitted she'd never trained mana before, not once. That threw him completely off. When he asked how she conjured her bullets, her blank look said everything. She had no idea what magic bullet training even was, and that was absurd. For a gunner, learning magic bullet was day one stuff. The fact that she had been holding her own against high-tier opponents without even knowing the basics, that kind of raw, instinctual combat ability made Kim's brain short-circuit. Realizing she was winging it this entire time, he offered a bit of guidance. Once she learned to control her mana and picked up proper technique, everything would click and get a whole lot easier. Before long, the placement exam began. Students gathered in the hall as their teacher stood before a massive portal. The next test, the Mist Forest Dungeon. Their instructor, still the same psycho in a teacher's coat, started laying out the rules. The mode was called High Score. Every monster taken down in 10 minutes counted toward their total. The more monsters they defeated, the higher the score. Simple on paper, brutal in practice. The second rule was called the Fixed Zone, essentially a rank-locked zone where everything, from gear to traits to the core itself, dropped to F rank. It meant no fancy advantages, no overpowered weapons, just raw skill. The homeroom teacher laid it all out bluntly and warned them not to get smart with mana management. After the briefing, he began calling names for the next dungeon batch. Predictably, groans filled the room. Most of the students started whining about the rules' unfairness, which only made the teacher more aware of how unremarkable most of them were. A few like Han Somi and Choi Jong-pi looked decent enough to stand a chance, but the rest? He didn't hold out hope. Kim and Yang were up next. While prepping, Kim casually told her to use a rifle and aim for the head if anyone got too close. Chun-hai, observing nearby, found it odd that someone not even classified as a gunner was handing out combat tips like a veteran tactician. They soon split up, and Kim entered the dungeon alone. It had been a while since he'd set foot in the Mist Forest, so he took it as the perfect test of his current strength. The countdown hit 0. First thing he did was dismantle a goblin who had tried to set up a weak ambush. Rookie move. In this dungeon, monsters could spawn from anywhere, throwing most students off balance. But Kim understood the pattern beneath the chaos. The system had flaws, and those flaws were predictable. Recalling the goblin's position, he guessed it was following the C pattern, one of the recurring spawn formations he'd studied. He followed that logic, drew his short blade, and threw it straight into an ogre's eye, piercing the skull with precision. For a moment, he wondered if he even needed a staff anymore. He smiled as he looted the ogre's weapon, treating it like a free upgrade. From there, he rampaged through the dungeon without hesitation, racking up points fast. When 2 trolls charged him, thinking he was vulnerable, they found out the hard way they were wrong. Kim didn't even flinch. Before exiting, he remembered the dungeon had a replay feature and immediately erased his footage. If the system ever synced monster AI to his own movements, it would create complications he didn't need. Only 3 minutes in, and he already had more than enough points to meet subquest conditions. No point in drawing extra attention. He stepped out early. Outside, he spotted Yane leaving the portal, looking exhausted and muttering about how rough it had been. His early exit caught the homeroom teacher's attention. He remembered this was the same kid who once gave up during a PvP match. Now he was clocking out before the 10-minute mark again. Internally, the teacher scoffed. A quitter could never become a dragon slayer. But then he checked the rankings, and everything changed. Kim had landed squarely in the mid-high tier bracket, an achievement that shattered expectations. No one had ever climbed that high in such a short span of time. It was enough to shake the teacher's perspective. Maybe this kid wasn't so ordinary after all. From that moment, Kim earned a spot on his watch list. The next group entered the dungeon, Hyunwoo among them. Kim checked the board. Even top-tier names like Lee and Mo Young-jun hovered around Han Somi's level. It made him wonder if Hyunwoo could take the lead. Right then, the scoreboard updated. Hyunwoo was on top, with the highest score of the day. No fluke, no lucky run. Kim congratulated him as soon as he exited, but Hyunwoo brushed off the praise, crediting his success to the reset Kim had given him during their PvP match. Still, not everyone nearby was thrilled to see them celebrating. A few snide remarks floated their way. Hyunwoo started to react, but Kim shut it down with a knowing wink. No need to waste energy on noise. When Kim asked if the test was over, Hyunwoo pointed out that Chunhae's results hadn't appeared yet. Back in the dungeon, she was in trouble. Surrounded by goblins, she struggled to keep up. Every shot she fired lacked the edge to turn the tide. Then she remembered what Kim had told Yane about aiming for the head. With focus, she poured all her mana into a single point and drew back her bow, firing one heavy, concentrated shot. It helped, but not enough. Her score came out lower than expected, and as it flashed in front of the entire hall, embarrassment hit hard. She muttered to herself, clearly frustrated that her performance was now public. Once the test concluded, the homeroom teacher officially called off the exam and informed the students that results would be released the following day. He advised everyone to rest until then. But the moment class was dismissed, he made a beeline straight to the system's operator, Four Eyes, and demanded access to Kim's replay footage from the Conquest exam. The tech guy immediately tried retrieving the file, only to discover that the video hadn't been saved at all. That didn't sit right. Suspicion instantly set in, and after a quick search, they uncovered what was already beginning to feel obvious. Kim had deleted the footage himself. The move raised several red flags. The teacher calculated that if Kim had continued at the pace he started, his score would have easily pushed past 2,000 points. That kind of result was abnormal, even dangerous. The teacher briefly considered the possibility. What if Kim was one of the evil lord's apostles who had slipped into the academy? Rather than escalate immediately, he decided to keep surveillance tight. If they rushed to the principal without solid proof, Kim might vanish underground and become even harder to track. As he walked off, the teacher quietly settled on one thought. If Kim truly was an imposter, it was only a matter of time before the truth surfaced. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the academy cafe, Kim, Hyunwoo, and Yan gathered over coffee, trying to decipher the confusing academy booklet. Kim told Hyunwoo to pull out his student ID and check his current score. The number displayed wasn't just a rank, it represented academy points, a currency system for everything within the school. He explained that these points could be earned through dungeon completions and could be exchanged for items, services, and even recorded footage, replays from other students' dungeon runs. To demonstrate, Kim purchased a recording of Soman's run for 100 points. Watching the footage of the blue-haired girl shocked Hyunwoo. The ease with which recordings could be accessed left him stunned. Kim noted that since Hyunwoo had a high score, his own replays were probably in high demand, and right on cue, 300 points were deposited into Hyunwoo's account from students purchasing his footage. That realization hit hard. It wasn't good news. It meant other students could now study his movements, tactics, and weaknesses with ease. Kim warned him. While the special rules inside the Mist Forest dungeon had helped mask his flaws, that cover wouldn't last. His core was weak, and it was only a matter of time before others figured it out. Still, the amount of points the gamble brought in made the risk tempting. For now, it was a high-stakes trade-off, and the entire academy was watching. Kim eventually unveiled a crucial piece of information. There existed a special training room where the mana density was exceptionally high. This place allowed for accelerated cultivation and faster growth, a true asset for anyone looking to rise quickly. Hearing this, Hyunwoo practically launched himself out of his seat, stunned that such a facility even existed. But the excitement didn't last long. Kim clarified the catch. The room wasn't freely accessible. Entry came with strict limitations, namely a price tag of 500 points for just 6 hours of use. That price hit hard. Hyunwoo quickly realized that if he visited the room regularly, he'd end up more broke than a beggar on the street. Looking for alternatives, he asked if there was any other way in. Kim, visibly more enthusiastic now, revealed there was a workaround, the season pass, something handed exclusively to top-ranking clubs. But that meant ousting someone like Mo Young-jun from the swordsmanship club, which was laughably unrealistic. Hyunwoo threw in the towel early, but Kim wasn't finished. With that same sly confidence, he offered a trade. He'd get the season pass, for a price. The favor he asked in return? Once Hyunwoo became strong enough, he would have to enter the deep dungeon. Unlike the Mist Forest, this one was deadly. A far more dangerous environment, no safety nets, no leeway. Hyunwoo didn't hesitate. He claimed to have a warrior's spirit and accepted without question. With that, Kim told him to grind hard in the meantime, promising to secure the season pass in 2 weeks. Later that day, Kim paid a visit to the engineering workshop to pursue another one of his signature under-the-table deals. Inside the dimly lit room, a shut-in upperclassman was already buried in work, barely acknowledging the new presence. Kim greeted him with forced politeness, stating his intention to join the Magic Engineering Club. The senior wasn't amused. He wanted to know why Kim bypassed Workshop 1 and came directly to Workshop 4. Kim, playing the fool, replied that the Workshop 1 folks had sent him here, instantly irritating the guy. The senior, clearly fed up, told him to speak quickly and get out. While the engineer turned his back, Kim took the chance to assess him, B rank in magical engineering, and that was all Kim needed. Without hesitation, he copied the skill, no permission asked, no shame felt. Then his eyes scanned the cluttered workshop. Eventually, they locked onto a shiny blue cube resting off to the side. A mischievous grin crept across his face. He picked up the cube and casually asked whether it held any value. The senior, without even looking, said it was junk, too complicated to replicate, too useless to bother with. Kim played it cool and offered a catalyst reagent in exchange, feigning guilt over taking something without giving anything in return. The reagent, though not exactly valuable, was a staple for any engineer. The senior agreed, even asking Kim to keep the deal quiet. As Kim walked away, he glanced back just once to see the senior grinning like he had won something. Little did he know, Kim had just traded a 1,000-point catalyst for what the man considered trash. Then, like clockwork, an optional quest window popped up. The task was annoying and most would have ignored it, but Kim accepted it immediately. Because what nobody knew was that the reward for this so-called junk quest was a legendary S-rank item, the Cube of Life. Having once raised 1,000 S-rank characters in the past, Kim knew better than to waste time slogging through a painfully drawn-out quest line. Instead, he headed straight for the Mana training room, fully aware of a hidden exploit to craft the item without following the normal route. With amplification magic, he upgraded the copied B-rank magical engineering skill to S-rank and immediately began cracking into the 10x10 Rubik's Cube, a puzzle that would normally take days to solve, but which he aggressively tackled under the pressure of a strict 60-second window. Instead of relying on sheer brute force, he developed a rhythm, intensive meditation for an hour, strengthening his core, then 1-minute bursts of cube solving, cycling back and forth with ruthless focus. Every loop brought him closer to his goal. He had a hard deadline, Friday, because a very specific event was looming, and the Cube of Life had to be in his hands before then. The following morning brought a surprise twist in class. Yan arrived early, breaking her usual routine, while Hyunwoo was oddly late. But Kim's attention was instantly stolen by a sneak cookie attack, as Yan launched a barrage of crunchy dinosaur-shaped cookies at him without warning. The unexpected assault completely disarmed him. As he marveled at the nostalgic flavor, Hyunwoo finally showed up, glowing with satisfaction from the previous night's training session. His expression said everything. The special training room had worked wonders. That was all Kim needed to hear. He immediately reaffirmed his intention to secure the season pass, even if it killed him. Meanwhile, Yane stood frozen, staring at Kim in despair, her heart silently cracking from the fact that he mistook her lovingly crafted bear cookies for dinosaurs. Moments later, the homeroom teacher entered and dropped a major update. All battles would now take place in the arena, and the match timer was being extended to 10 minutes. No more quick draws. Every second would have to be used strategically. The new rules also made it mandatory for every first year to participate in at least 3 matches by the end of the week, or suffer a steep penalty to their grade. Kim's reaction was immediate. A sly grin stretched across his face. This was what he had been waiting for. The opportunity to wipe out the competition had finally arrived.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, it really helps. And for more content like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see another part. I'd love to hear your thoughts. See you next time. Bye-bye.